My name is Alma Brooks, and I'm from St. Mary's. Well, when I first got involved in the program, it was to learn my language because I was only 5.5 years old when my mother died. And although she spoke to me in Maliseet always, I grew up outside the reserve in a little piece of heaven called Indian Point on the beautiful Grand Lake. That's where I grew up. But and so when I was little, she spoke to me in our language. But because I was only 5.5 when she died, I didn't hear the language after that. And by the time I was 10, I was beginning to forget the language. And so I had to come back. I think I was 70. No, I think I was 60, 67 or 68, somewhere in there, when I came back in as a student into this Maliseet Immersion program to learn my language. And I took the language program for 2 years. And I graduated at the top of my class, by the way. So when I finished, after I graduated, they hired me to teach for a couple of years. And to tell you the truth, I learned just as much and more from teaching as I did as a student. And it's a very, very necessary program. It's the only way that our language will survive on the face of the earth, because we can't go anywhere else to get the Maliseet language, nowhere else in the world. It originated from this land, and if it's gone, it'll be gone forever. And so I'm so glad that the people, and I give them all the credit in the world, the people that worked so hard and continue to this day. To work so hard to keep this language program going. Well, I think you never stop learning. There are many different ways of learning. There's experiential learning, there's classroom and academic learning, there's all kinds of different. We have a whole culture, our people have a whole culture and tradition that has not been incorporated into the educational system. And so I think the time has come that there needs to be some major reforms with the educational standards and rules and regulations, and that the rules need to be changed to accommodate our culture. And like for an example, the nurses, we have many of our people that are studying and graduating to be nurses from the academic world. And yet, when settlers first came here, our people had superior knowledge in medicine and had knowledge of all the plants, and not just the plants, but they used the medicinal plants along with the spiritual aspect of it. And so that's much of that's still alive today. And if they married the two, it would be a very powerful thing for our people. Not everybody has to do it, but certainly our people who have chosen that profession should have the option to combine what they know from the Western world with their own traditions and culture. I think it would be a very powerful thing. And that could be done in all other fields as well, not just nursing, but a lot of fields, and do the same idea. But a lot of this knowledge too is in our language, and 50% of who we are is in our language. So it's just as vital for us to make sure that our language doesn't die. We should have the right to study anything in our own language, in that medium of our own language. Why not? The French do it. Any other peoples do it in their own language. Why can't we? So that's an option that should be available to us, and they should begin teaching the children from preschool because right now today in the schools, the in high school is when they start learning the language, and that's not gonna suffice. We need to have a curriculum that will advance along with as they graduate and grow. The curriculum should advance. By the time they get to high school, they should have conversational Maliseet.
Yeah.
They should be able to hold a conversation. I'm hoping that as we get closer and closer to the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, that the intent of that is a guideline, and it talks a lot about education. It's one of the made and the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, made recommendations around including our culture in the education system. So, I think with the implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, the intent of it was to be a guide. It outlines the rights that we have, but it's a guide for negotiations.
Mm-hmm.
And the intent is that the federal and provincial governments have to change their legislation to accommodate our rights, not to interpret or define our rights out of existence or cherry pick the document or the declaration, but to literally take our rights, take their legislation and change it so that it accommodates our rights. Well, funding is certainly very necessary to have a successful program,
Yeah.
because everybody has to live. We've been an industry for everybody else's livelihood for too many generations. It's time we're able to do something for ourselves too, for change. And so funding certainly is a given, as well as the development of resources so that people that are working will have the resources to be able to use, like the tools that they need in order to teach our language and to teach education in our language. As we progress in that field, like the books, history books, all the curriculum and everything needs to be developed.
Yeah.
Right from preschool, right all the way up to university.
Yeah. That's true.
It's going to take a lot of work, but our people need work. What's wrong with hiring our people? We've been in industry too long for others.
Mm-hmm.
It's time we, looked after our own and had a say in what we do that's going to affect our lives in the future.